Good evening, everyone. Welcome back to today's edition of News You Can Use. Today is Wednesday, July 12th, and I'm Mya Henry, and I'm so happy and excited to be here with you guys today, sharing the latest updates and insights that can truly make a difference in your life and in your business as well. So, for today's segment, I'm going to be sharing with you guys the most relevant news, trends, topics, and practical tips so you guys can stay ahead of the game if you apply them right away. So, without further ado, let's get ready and let's get started and prepare yourself for an enriching and informative session that will empower you to have an edge as you build your business. So, let's jump right in. So, getting started, the first thing I'm going to share with you guys is how Americans are struggling to pay car loans. So, severely delinquent car loans are reaching the highest rate since the financial crisis of 2009. Loans delinquent by more than 2 months increased by 5.3% and jumped 26.7% from a year ago. An alarming number of Americans with auto loans are struggling to make monthly payments. Auto loan performance saw further deterioration in December and loan delinquencies jumped. Of all loans, severely delinquent ones have reached the highest rate in the financial crisis about 15 years ago. But here's where it starts to sound alarming. So, of all loans, 1.84% were severely delinquent, which was an increase from 1.74% in November and the highest rate since February of 2009. In December, 7.11% of subprime loans were severely delinquent, increasing from 6.75% the month prior. So the subprime surveyor delinquency rate was 163 basis points higher than a year ago. And the December rate was the highest in the data series back to 2006. Loan defaults declined 13.5% from November, but were up 16.9% from a year ago. The annualized auto loan default rate in December was 2.56%, which was lower than 2.98% rate in December of 2019. The default rate in 2022 was 2.28%, up from a low of 1.98% last year, but still lower than 2.90% rate in 2019. So perhaps the reason why defaults have yet to surge is that lenders don't consider the borrower to be in default until 90 to 120 days late of insufficient payments. This might suggest that a default wave could be bringing or hitting over for the next few quarters as consumers are tapped out by 20 months of negative real wave growth, depleted personal savings, and maxed out credit cards. All of those folks who bought cars that they didn't need nor couldn't afford with $1,000 monthly payments during COVID will be financially ruined when the next recession hits. How crazy is that? So, another thing that I want to share with you guys is a story about a 72-year-old woman and how she hopes to retire one day, but as soon as she raises enough money on GoFundMe, yes, you guys heard me right. GoFundMe. So only about half of the US workers have access to 401k accounts, but even those that do may struggle to save enough for retire. So GoFundMe campaigns have been raising a whole bunch of money for these older Walmart employees who want to retire. And these stories are pretty touching and heartwarming. So of course, people give into these stories and they donate money. But when there's the mask that falls, there's a deep and dark reality about economic security, about growing old in America. So it's really not so much of a feel good story, but it's more about the failure of the retirement system. So fundraisers for aging Walmart employees have appeared on GoFundMe over the years. So this isn't anything new, but they started popping up more frequently last summer and they gained momentum during the holidays, right? So the campaigns are typically started by someone who's has either seen a baby boomer or an older employee working at their local Walmart, right? Or someone who has an older loved one working at the store as well. So the appeals usually feature a photo of the worker in their store vest and their name tag. So some describe situations where people in their 80s and 90s are working because they need to pay off medical bills, and others simply just say that they're trying to give an older person who's been working most of their life some peace of mind and relaxation. Which, by the way, Walmart did not respond to any requests for comments on this news, right? So after TikTok videos went viral, after encouraging people to donate money, a few of the Walmart workers hit the GoFundMe equivalent of winning a lottery ticket. So an 82-year-old woman, she was able to retire after a GoFundMe attracted more than $166,000 in donation. And another woman named Carmen, 82-year-old as well, she bought in more than $136,000, and it was actually covered on Good Morning America, right? So this is crazy because there's people out here who are struggling to make ends meet, and they're in their 60s, 70s, 80s, even 90s, still having to work, right? Because they don't have any other choice. So what we need to do is we need to teach people about money, which is why I would always suggest that everyone could always come over and start working with us, because here you never have to worry about not having enough money for retirement, right? And piggybacking off of that, another story where it was a 74-year-old woman who said, I will work until I die. So I'm 74, have little money saved, and battle medical issues. I want to retire so I can have a few years to enjoy life. She wants to retire so she can have just a few years to enjoy life. Now, she stated how she somehow failed to take care of herself, and she spent her money on helping her family members with their money, and she was never able to save anything. So, mind you, she's also battling with medical issues, right? So she's 74 years old and she must continue to work to pay off her condo in the amount of 56,000, and to also pay off her car in the amount of $8,000, right? So she wants to retire so she can have a few years to enjoy life. And she wants to know if there's anyone who could help her, because she acknowledges that if there's no one that can help her, she has no other choice but to work until she dies. And her life, she says, and I quote, my life has been nothing but misery of working and worrying if I can pay my taxes and bills. I never thought I would end up at 74 and still need to work. Now, isn't that crazy, guys? So let's talk a little bit about layoffs. So Microsoft and Amazon, they're at a total of 28,000 employees who have been laid off. So why are we seeing some of the highest layoff techs in history, right? So combined, Amazon and Microsoft have laid off 28,000 employees, and a wave of tech layoffs is going to continue further this year, right? So the current economic climate is highly unsettled, and recession fears have plagued our economy for months. So we still haven't hit an official recession yet. However, mass layoffs in the tech industry have shown us that the economic picture is anything but pretty, right? So what exactly is happening? So it's not a secret that the tech industry has been struggling for months. In 2022, hundreds of companies across the tech industry instituted layoffs. Meta's layoffs were among the most eye-popping headlines, with over 11,000 employees who were left without a job. And it looks like tech layoffs were going to continue with lasting impacts in 2023. So earlier this year, Amazon and Microsoft announced that they were going to lay off their employees. So in early January, Microsoft's CEO announced that there were going to be significant layoffs in a company. So she stated, today we are making changes that will result in the reduction of our overall workforce by 10,000 jobs through the end of this year. So that itself represents less than 5% of the total employees there. So it's important to know this information because people are getting laid off their jobs, right? So you would think like, oh yeah, like your job is supposed to be something stable, but yet these companies clearly show that they do not care enough for the employees when they have absolutely no problem just laying them off like that. So Amazon, so while Microsoft is having a layoff of around 10,000 people, Amazon is having a layoff with an astounding total of 18,000 people. And this number includes layoffs from November of 2022. So this cut represents approximately 6% of Amazon's workforce. So Amazon has weathered uncertain and difficult economies in the past, and it's going to continue to do so. So these changes, they're going to help Amazon pursue and achieve their long-term opportunities with a stronger cost structure. However, they're laying off their employees as they're in the process of doing that. So let me share with you guys a few reasons why these tech layoffs happen, right? So it's estimated that approximately 174 tech companies have already laid off over 56,000 employees in 2023. So these layoffs are evidence of a struggling tech industry, but why is it that the tech sector is having such a tough time? So the tech industry is constantly shifting. So the nature of the companies working on or ever evolving their technology, which always is going to cause a shift. The more technology that they evolve, it's always going to cause a shift. So in other words, it's really not stable. So as the company grows towards newer technology, some people are left behind. So even Microsoft's CEO pointed out that the company will continue to lay off some of their employees, right? Another reason is shaky economic times because in the last year, the economy has been anything but stable. So as households and companies brace for a recession, it's an appropriate time for some belt tightening. So households can trim their expenses by cutting back on splurges, and companies often cut back by instituting layoffs. So layoffs, they aren't pleasant for anyone, but the action might be what the company needs to stay afloat. So in other words, the company is always going to put themselves first, even if that means laying off some of their employees. And this is just another reason why people should get involved and start working with us because here, what is a layoff? A layoff doesn't exist here, right? Everyone needs something solid and stable. And here you have the opportunity to have that. Okay, so let's get a little bit into retirement lifestyle. So if you want an average retirement lifestyle, you're gonna need more than 1 million, sometimes a lot more in certain cities, right? So it now takes retirees more than a cool million to fund an average lifestyle in nearly 40% of the 384 United States metropolitan areas, right? So nationally, retirees would need an average nest egg of 1.7 million. Meanwhile, a retiree in San Francisco needs nearly 1.37 million, right? So after San Francisco rounded out the 5 places where you're going to need a bigger nest egg to retire. And one of those places are New York. Along with New York is San Diego, Hawaii, specifically Honolulu, San Jose, California as well. So you can retire with an average lifestyle for less than 800,000 in just one metro area, and that is Johnstown, Pennsylvania. And it's right at the mark of 77,000, right? And also Cumberland in Maryland with $802,000, right? So, for example, high housing costs in San Francisco are often attributed to strict development regulations and scarce land. So that's created a limited supply in a city with high demand, and that it's close to Silicon Valley with its high salaries, which plays a huge part in driving up prices. So it's no wonder that San Francisco, a neighboring metro area to San Jose, is pricey. It's a pricey place to live, and it's a pricey place to decide, you want to retire there. So ultimately, each metro is unique and it will have its own pros and cons that can make it more or less expensive. This is the truth of metros that are ostensibly similar or that are in the same state. So anyone thinking about retiring in a given area should thoroughly research it before packing their bags and moving. Don't let your preconceived notions or vague ideas about an area dictate whether or not you choose to live there. So while San Francisco and San Diego and San Jose rank at the top of the list of areas in which you need the biggest nest egg to retire in, other California metro areas aren't far behind. So, in fact, 12 of the top 20 metro areas are in the Golden State. And joining that trip is Los Angeles in sixth place. And it takes a nest egg of $1.2 million to retire and maintain an average standard of living there. So simply put, California is a very attractive state for a lot of people. The climate is generally agreeable. There's a lot of variety in terms of geography that anyone can experience in the States, from beaches to mountains. And along with that, there's a lot of stable and often high paying jobs to go around. So California itself is pretty appealing and many people would want to live there, which means that there is less housing supply and other resources, and the cost of living is higher. So for many retirees, this is higher than the cost of living, but in some cases it could be worth it, even if it requires more savings. So like I mentioned previously, other states that can make an appearance in that top 20 would include Hawaii, New York, Florida, Colorado, Washington, and as well as the District of Columbia. So the only metro area primarily in a landlocked state in the top 20 is Denver, where you're most likely going to need a nest egg of 1.2 million to retire. So of course, having a high paying job and not a lot of debt, those are two things that many people don't have, but it will make saving much easier. And even if you do everything right, there's no guarantee that you'll end up with a 1 million nest egg. So what does it take to be in the top 1% by state, right? So the gap between 1% of earners and an average American is in stark. So in fact, the average American household earns a median income of under 70,000, but in some places, the top 1% can earn as much as 955,000. So those annual earnings can seem far out of reach in a country where less than 10% of all households earn more than 200,000, according to the US Census Bureau. So ultimately, climbing the economic ladder is difficult, but it's less intimidating in some states compared to others. So New Jersey overtakes New York. So New York ranked number 3 in last year's edition, with residents needing 777,000 to be a top 1% taxpayer, while New Jersey followed with just 760,000. So this year, New Jersey outpaces New York, tops 1% by $8,168. So there's this one state where you're going to need more than $900,000 to be in the top 1%, and that state is Connecticut. The top 1% of taxpayers in Connecticut have the highest average tax burden, which is 27.77%, and residents in the next highest state need roughly 58,000 to be a top 1% taxpayer. Now in Virginia, you're gonna roughly need 374,000, and 374,000 in Virginia will put you in the top 1%. West Virginia, to be specific, and this is the lowest threshold across the country. So after Virginia, Mississippi follows, where taxpayers are going to need roughly 383,000 to be a top 1% taxpayer. So as you can see, each state is different. So Connecticut comes first, and it's the state where the income threshold is the highest. Massachusetts comes second. New Jersey comes third, New York fourth, and in fifth place, we have California. So I thought that this would be important news to share with you guys as well. Now, talking about New York City, we have people who are migrating to New York City, and at the same time, they're selling $2 candy bars in the subway just to survive. So you have newly arrived migrants from South and Central America who are taking over the underground subway system in order to make a living to supply to their babies and their families at home, right? So these migrants are coming in, and as they're coming in, there's people who are telling them, okay, well, if you want to make a living here, if you want to survive, what you need to do is start selling $2 candy bars on the subway. So we have parents, for example, Maria Vaca. She was 25 and she's been in New York for just 8 days, and she needed money to pay her rent to her cousin in the Bronx, right? So as she started selling $2 candy bars in the subway, she collects $70, right? So you can only imagine how much of a struggle that is. I just went over what it takes to be a top 1% in New York. So just imagine getting by with $70 every day. These are people who need an opportunity to learn, okay, how is it that I'm going to make money? And along with that, speaking of how to make money, we have millions of Americans who are earning $100,000, but they're still living paycheck to paycheck. So more than half of Americans who are earning over six-figure salaries admitted that they were still living paycheck to paycheck. So as high inflation slams households, and this is the reason why people are still living paycheck to paycheck. And at the end of December, 51% of Americans with $100,000 or more in annual income said they lived paycheck to paycheck. So the share rose 9% compared to 1 year earlier, when 42% of six-figure earners made the same admission. So overall, a whopping 64% of US consumers, which is the equivalent of 166 million Americans, said that they were living on razor-thin budgets each month. That was up from 61%, or about 9.3 million, compared to the previous year's finding. So of the 9.3 million Americans who joined the ranks of monthly struggle, 8 million earn more than $100,000. The effects of inflation are eating into every American's wallet, and as the Fed's efforts to curb inflation drive up those costs of debts, we are seeing a near record of numbers of Americans who are living paycheck to paycheck. So while the number of Americans living paycheck to paycheck is close to the height we saw in the middle of the pandemic, the cause appear to be very different, as the economy is not sheltering in place like it was back in 2020. So inflation has cooled slightly in recent months, but it still remains a major source of pressure, especially on US households. So overall, prices rose 6.5% in December, while the cost of groceries jumped up nearly 12%. So the services index, which includes housing, transportation, and Medicare, rose 7% compared to the last year. The share of Americans who said that they were having trouble covering their bills jumped up to 24% in December, and that's up 2% compared to the month 1 year earlier. So within the six-figure bracket, 16% said that they were struggling to pay their bills. So despite some improvements in inflation, many Americans are still taking a pessimistic view of the economy. So just 4 out of 10 Americans who admitted that they were living paycheck to paycheck expect their incomes to keep in pace with inflation this year. And additionally, 90% said that their pay increases were effectively wiped out by higher prices last year. And we can expect more and more Americans of all incomes identifying themselves as living paycheck to paycheck until we see the economy recover. So now more than ever, it is crucial for consumers to examine spending and building a cushion of savings to prepare for the unexpected. So people who are earning over more than 6 figures are living paycheck to paycheck. So if you want to learn how you can beat inflation and how to make your money work for you instead of you working for your money, it's another reason why I would suggest working with us as well. And of course, more companies are going off into laying off their employees. So FedEx is to lay off 10% of their global officers and their directors. So in Memphis, Tennessee, FedEx is laying 10% of its people. They're laying off 10% of their employees. And it's not known how many positions will be affected in Memphis, but the company employs some of 30,000 employees at its corporate headquarters, right? So the company's CEO says that the layoffs are necessary to become a more efficient organization, but they may hit hard in Memphis. So it's going to have an impact, right? So companies, like I mentioned before, they're laying off their people because they think that this is going to be an efficient decision that's going to take their company or organization to the better level. But like I said, people are out here losing their jobs that they're depending on, and that's not fair at all. So FedEx has a real need to remain profitable, and it's doing it by cost cutting. The layoffs, unfortunately, for people who are laid off, are an important part of that cost cutting process. So layoffs come at a time when shipping has slowed down and profits are smaller after the COVID pandemic and e-commerce boom. So late last year, FedEx shares plunged more than 22% amid news that the company had missed earnings expectations. So you guys see how a bunch of these companies are laying off their employees. So I would hate for anyone who has a job to think that they're in a stable position, because just like those employees are getting laid off, that could be you too, right? And the last thing I'm going to share with you guys is Beyonce news. So if anyone's a Beyonce fan, you probably heard about this. So Beyonce fans are going crazy on GoFundMe, and they're pleading for cash just so they can afford to buy concert tickets. Now, GoFundMe isn't anything new. We already know that. So we have people who are making public pleas for money. People are out here asking for money, you guys. So the Beehive is buzzing around on GoFundMe, asking family, asking friends, and asking other diehard fans to throw them some money so they can secure a ticket for her 2023 Renaissance tour. But the problem is, even if they get to raise the money, it doesn't mean that they're guaranteed a ticket. But that's not stopping people from trying, right? So you have people who are saying like this is in a lifetime experience and opportunity. So they want to get those tickets no matter what it is, even if it means going on GoFundMe. So another fan has said, listen, I would love your financial support and sending me to Beyonce's World Tour 2023. I haven't missed a Beyonce concert yet, but I got bills, and bills. So you guys, people are out here not knowing how they're going to get money to afford to pay for a concert ticket, right? So this is what I mean. People need to start working with us, because here you're never going to have to worry about, okay, like, am I going to afford this concert ticket, right? And then you have people who are in their 70s and 80s not getting the opportunity to enjoy their life because why? They have to get up every day, go to work, go home, sleep, repeat it, and do it the next day. You have people who aren't educated about money, don't know how to save money. But it's important to have this information shared, because people need to know that there's people out here like us, like me, like people in Team Alpha, who can educate you on how you can make your money work for you instead of you working so hard for your money. We can teach you how you can beat inflation, right? These are things that everyone needs to know. These are things that people don't think about in the moment until they get further in their future and they're like, oh, I don't have money. Oh, I need to go to work. I need to leave my kids. I need to leave my home because I need to sacrifice myself, sacrifice my time because I need to go to work and make money. So those are all the news that I had to share with you guys today. So I hope you guys enjoyed it. I hope this was helpful and I hope you guys apply this. That way you guys can use it in your business